Hey, how's it going? My name is Chris,
And I'm Trey.
and this is the two dudes, one up gaming podcast. I almost called it the two guys, one up gaming podcast. It's not even our name.
It's
Anyway,
better to
how you
two
doing
guys, one
tonight? How you
cup.
doing tonight, Trey?
I'm doing good.
Great.
How you doing, Chris?
I'm okay. It was a bit of a run day really to get everything going on. The Ian got called into work real fast, and so we had to scramble to get things fixed and sorted. And we had an entirely different set of content prepared for today, and we had to go change it all up. So everything is new. So we're just gonna go down the list and just talk about stuff. So we always start off with upcoming games, and we just pick a bunch of games that look interesting or that just catch our eye or whatever. Like we can't just know every game that's coming out, so we have to go and look up lists of what's going on, and we pick some. And so coming out tomorrow, there are actually a bunch of like a ton of games coming out. So I've picked a few of them that I thought were at least interesting or that looked like they should be noteworthy. So the first one is a game called Agony, which is for I believe the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And it's a sort of survival horror-y game that I guess has like sort of a linear campaign. Anyway, we have a trailer here that we're going to go ahead and show, and then we can come back and we can talk about the things that we've seen. So here we go.
Peggy 18.
There are many paths that can lead you to me. Enjoy the power I offered you. Find your way through the wasteland and savor the taste of blood. We are waiting for you, my beloved. Yes, we are. I feel my blood starting to boil. How much longer do I have to wait for you? My forgotten soul hunter.
We have to find a way out. There must be some way out.
And there it is.
Yeah, what a rush, Chris. I gotta say, I love the Agony game. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think the premise is kind of cool, and the scenery and imagery in it is just really twisted.
Okay. Nice. Have you heard of it before?
I have actually.
Oh, have you? Where have you heard about it?
So I've heard about it on a few other channels on YouTube and around through different gaming magazines. It was actually in a showcase that I watched not too long ago, kind of talking about some of the more intense upcoming horror games that are going to be coming out for the different systems. And I have to say, out of all of those, it's probably one of the more disturbing for the body dysmorphia and the body imagery associated in it,
Okay.
just because the ammunition even that you're using in the gun are teeth. So it just kind of adds an extra level of visceral terror from just the sheer amount of blood, guts, and gore in it.
That's interesting. So I mean, if teeth are your ammunition, does that mean like when you kill someone, you take their teeth and you use that to shoot?
So from what I've seen, they haven't yet released how the ammunition works as far as pickups are concerned.
Okay.
It looks like the ammunition is going to be very hard to come by, and it's very intermittent. I actually didn't even see the person who was playing the game pick up ammunition at all during their time, and that was often the thing that killed them the most, was that they ran out of ammo to deal with the monsters.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, that I'm not a big fan of horror games like that. I think the last horror game that I played was probably maybe Fear or maybe Soma. Maybe Soma. But I tend to lean more towards like the thriller style of game. Like I think Fear is much more thriller, and then stuff like Doom and Dead Space, that kind of thing. I've always liked to make the distinction between horror and thriller. Horror being the catalyst for being, for the fear there is that you can't defend yourself, that you are always at risk, that you're always nervous, that you're always, about to get, killed or something else. And thriller being where, you've got the opportunity to defend yourself, where you can fight back, where it's not a hopeless situation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And honestly, I think for a lot of horror games, that's definitely part of what they offer is that experience that normally in a game, it's a power fantasy. You're getting to be that one-man army like Master Chief running through destroying Covenant. And I think horror games kind of bring it back down to basics a lot, making you feel powerless and kind of adding that edge of fear in your gameplay experience, kind of like with titles like Outlast and Outlast 2, where you don't even have a weapon, you have a camera that has night vision, and you have to balance batteries and other equipment just to try and survive. You don't even get the chance to really fight.
Yeah, and that's why I think games like Amnesia are like a very good example of survival horror, because it's not so much you can fight back, it's you're always running, like there's always a threat on your life, that kind of thing. Like even if you go and you play Resident Evil, like very much a thriller game. The first one I could see being a bit more horror, even though you did have a gun, but ammunition in the first one was so limited that it was always, do you risk dying or do you save your ammunition for what might be coming up around the next corner? Like, will you have enough green herbs and that kind of thing? So,
yeah, and if that's definitely something you enjoyed, especially with the Resident Evil franchise, then you love Resident Evil 7 because it really does bring it back down to those basics. Whereas back in like Resident Evil 5, a lot of fans were complaining how the game really migrated away from being that horror survival to being an action, almost FPS experience.
gotcha. It's interesting you have that view on RE7, because I recently played through 7, and I think only at the very beginning did I really feel like it was a horror experience, because once I started getting weapons, I found, like, because I was playing, I don't remember if there were multiple difficulties. I must have played it on normal if there weren't, but there came to a point in that game, maybe a couple hours in, where I didn't feel nervous or threatened. I was just always alert. Do you know what I mean? I was ready for whatever was about to come next. And whenever it did, I just kind of took care of it. I had enough ammunition and I had enough means of defense at my disposal that I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready the whole time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And, that is definitely one of the aspects where you do get guns or weapons of a certain kind and they do prove effective in a horror situation. It does strip away some of that just helpless feeling that lends itself to the terror.
True. Well, let's move on. Like I said, we have a lot of games coming out tomorrow. Another one is the 30th anniversary Street Fighter collection, and that's coming out on all the places: PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So if you're a fan of old school beat 'em ups, you want to check that one out. There's also another classics collection coming out. That's the Sega Genesis Classics collection, and that'll be around on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. So I haven't looked at it too closely, but I imagine it's going to have Sonic the Hedgehog and probably like maybe, I don't know, 3D Blast, and I don't know what does Sega have outside of Sonic that's classic?
As far as classic experiences with Sega, I know some people were able to get ports of the Mega Man games in there. But really my experience with the Sega Genesis and Saturn maybe isn't the typical one that a lot of people have with the system, as I remember most of the time that I spent with those game systems being devoted to games like the Batman Forever movie plug-in game, which was a hell of a lot of fun for me personally.
Mm-hmm. No, that game was fantastic. I know exactly what you're talking about. I played that.
Yeah, it was great. But as far as games outside of that, for your real like classic fan games are really iconic, I'm not too familiar on those things, but I do have to say if it offers any of those games like the Batman game or some of those other kind of offshoot titles, I would be really excited to see what is there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So next thing we have coming out tomorrow is a game called Die for Valhalla. And I thought this was I saw the title. I never heard of it until yesterday when I was looking up games, and I never heard of it. And I was like, all right, I'll take a look at this. Like when I'm looking up games that are coming out, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to talk about. A good title, a catchy title, is gonna get me to click on your game name. The same way like good box art would have gotten me to buy your game in the late '90s, And so I took a look at Die for Valhalla. And it's sort of a cartoon animation style, like a beat 'em up, but it's more along the lines of like Turtles in Time used to be, where you're one or two people kind of on the screen, and there's a bunch of enemies all around you, and you're fighting them off, and when you die, like a ghost flies back, and you take another Viking and you head him out there, and that kind of thing. So I thought that looked pretty cool.
And I have to say, I'm really excited to see it come around just because it looks like it could be promising, and it does have a history as a Kickstarter game. So the more that those come out really and meet fruition, I think the more we're going to see actual good product come out of Kickstarter, because it kind of fulfills the promises that a lot of investors do bring forward that more often than not get failed and dropped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is sort of an offshoot thought, but it's interesting that a lot of people look at Kickstarter as an investment situation, because there's really no return on your investment from Kickstarter aside from the product that is produced. Traditional investment is a continual return, whereas Kickstarter is you pay for the hope of something down the line, right?
And I think that's kind of where you get the idea of like rewards at different tiers where they might offer swag in exchange for it. But really, I think like what you're saying, the only real thing that you really have to look forward to is the product, and that's why it's so devastating when those things fail to come to market.
Yeah, for sure. I think we might come back and touch on that a little bit here a little bit later. So, Trey, do you like being insulted?
I mean,
not big on it.
Not necessarily. I mean, I will say that I've seen professional insulters before, like when I've gone to the Renaissance Festival. But outside of that, I can't really say that I've been too keen on the whole idea of personally being insulted. My ego's a little fragile.
What if I told you there was a game you could play that was all about insulting your friends, and it was all in good fun, and you would win by coming up with the best insult?
It sounds like a little more targeted version almost of Cards Against Humanity, so I'm interested.
Right? So this game exists, and it's called Oh Sir, the Insult Simulator. I think it's $2 on Steam, and it has been forever. I love that thing. It's hilarious. Anytime I'm getting to meet somebody new online, if you ever do like when you hang out a lot on Twitch, you tend to you browse a lot of channels and you try to do networking and you meet people. A lot of the times, you'll be hanging out with somebody and just chatting with them, just trying to get to know them a little bit. And I find that game is the easiest way to get to know somebody, because it allows you to have fun insulting each other when you know it means nothing, but some of the insults are just completely ridiculous. And you're also like chatting and doing that kind of thing. And because you're interacting with someone in an area where they're learning how to do something that's new to them, it really can give you a lot of insight into their personality, I suppose, and how that works. But without digressing too far, there is another game in the Oh Sir series that came out recently called Oh Sir, the Hollywood Roast. And this has been out for a little while, but it's in the upcoming games list because it's coming to PS4 tomorrow. And wouldn't you know it, we happen to have a trailer. So sit tight, ladies and gentlemen.
The days of polite society and civil discourse are over. Insults are sweeping the nation, and Hollywood is getting in on the fun.
Presenting Oh Sir Hollywood Roast, the dolled-up sequel to the worldwide smash hit game that puts you head-to-head with a star-studded cast of opponents in a verbal insult duel to the death. From grisly wizards to comic book superheroes, these Hollywood cliches are dishing out the most deplorable insults ever captured on film.
Your sister lost a wizard duel to a three-headed dog's droppings.
Play alone or with online multiplayer as one of your favorite foul-mouthed stars, like decomposing Hollywood starlet Marilyn No More.
You sensually massage hordes of paparazzi.
She's no lame dame. And who's this? Why, it's Wisecrack, the foul-mouthed comic book hero birthed from a Hollywood focus group.
Turns out you're smaller and dumber in person.
Ouch, that's smarts. And whatever you do, don't cross Tinseltown's most deadly martial arts assassin, Chop Suey.
Your character is a perfect metaphor for an angry Reddit user.
Pow! Right in the kisser. Oh Sir Hollywood Roast, the big budget production that gets even bigger, with free planned updates delivering a brand new cast of characters and locations. Take a gander at all the new features like comebacks, local multiplayer with gamepad support, campaign mode with unlockable comebacks, characters and locations, character creation mode, and Twitch integration, allowing users to vote on the most insultiest insult. So find out what all of Tinseltown's talking trash about with Oh Sir Hollywood Roast, available now on Steam and mobile devices.
So that actually looks really funny, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love how they're just skirting the parody law line with all of those characters.
Oh, every one of them. Yeah, it's beautiful. The Insult Simulator was very much like that, and it just looks like another Insult Simulator, except just with new characters and new insults. And I mean that's great. I don't expect it's any more than like a couple of bucks. Like, they have been hilarious to play with everybody. They're great. Ian and I have played it. Chris has played it. I think Matt might have played it. I know a bunch of people we play it with. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, having a face-off between Serious Sam and an old woman from Brisbane in a pet shop where Serious Sam is trying to return a dead bird because it's dead is pretty good.
Or you can always fulfill all your fan fiction fantasies and show the showdown between Gandalf and Harry Potter. Now that kind of looks interesting to me personally.
Who would
just
win?
Just kind of like all the bad fan fiction are coming back to me. And I have
man.
to say, it's both a very nostalgic feeling and absolutely traumatizing. I'm going to have to call my therapist tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Well, let's move on before you recess any deeper into the depths of your mind. Have you played Ikaruga?
I have not had the pleasure.
Nor have I. But it's coming to Switch tomorrow, so maybe one day. Right? This is one of those games that I hear a lot of good things about, but I've never gotten around to it myself. And I felt like it was at least worth mentioning that now it's going to be in another place. That I believe... Do you have a Switch?
Me personally, no. I'm more of a PC and PlayStation 4 gamer.
Okay, that's fair. This is a complete aside. There's a game that is in open beta, Dauntless, that is basically Monster Hunter, but not as good. Anyway, and it's on PC. It's the only reason I bring that up. And because I really want to play Monster Hunter, please release for PC. Okay, moving
you gotta
on.
pump the hate brakes a little bit, though. I mean, not as good as Monster Hunter, man. Yeah.
It's not as good as Monster Hunter.
I don't know. Is it a JRPG like Monster Hunter?
No.
Well, then it might offer something new or something different for a different audience. So don't short sell it.
Maybe. I mean, I was playing it today for like 2 hours, so...
Well, you might have a better idea.
It's free. You can go download it. It's called The Dauntless. Anyhow, I don't know. Let's just move on before we delve into the depths. Hey, you played Eve at some point, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And
So
I gotta tell you, I
when was
keep
the last
hearing
time?
stories about just griefing and terrible things that have happened on Eve. Like what was it? The Hulkageddon, or what was that
Hulk,
one?
oh, I forgot all about Hulking, dude, years ago. So, all right, fun old story. So, in Eve Online, one of the large so industry is a huge thing. Eve revolves around a war economy, and in order to build ships to continue that economy, you have to mine resources in order to build those ships. And so there are specific mining vessels that go out and just mine, and that's what they do. And it's hugely profitable, especially if you can get some of the rare resources. And if you have a large fleet and you're taking in even like titanium as like some of those like the really like easy to get resources, like it's still very profitable. And so one of the funny things that happened in Eve a few years back was there is a particular large scale mining vessel called the Hulk, and its cargo bay is massive, and it was just a very popular ship to go mining in, because it was a great miner. It was really good. It had like a bunch of mining turret slots. It had decent shields. It could get away if it had to. And you would often see fleets of Hulks going out into the asteroid fields and mining them dry and then coming back. And so at some point, I'm not going to say which alliance did it, these bastards, but at some point, these damn goons decided they wanted to go ahead and put a bounty on all Hulks. Any Hulk, anywhere. If you could prove that you destroyed a Hulk, they would pay you 1,000,000 ISK. No questions asked. Any Hulk, anywhere. Their Hulks, other people's Hulks, kill them all. And so for a very long time, flying around in a Hulk was just suicide, because people would see that and go, I'm going to fly out there in a 35K ship, blow that shit up, and get $1,000,000 and make huge profit. So that was Hulkageddon. Anyhow, I used to run an alliance in EVE Online, and it was mostly a hands-off thing with the alliance, but I was much more hands-on with my corp. And the reason I bring any of this up is that the new EVE Online content pack, Into the Abyss, is releasing tomorrow, and they pay you 1,000,000 ISK. No questions asked. Any Hulk, anywhere. Their Hulks, other people's Hulks, kill them all. And so for a very long time, flying around in a Hulk was just suicide, because people would see that and go, I'm going to fly out there in a 35K ship, blow that shit up, and get $1,000,000 and make huge profit. So that was Hulkageddon. Anyhow, I used to run an alliance in EVE Online, and it was mostly a hands-off thing with the alliance, but I was much more hands-on with my corp. And the reason I bring any of this up is that the new EVE Online content pack, Into the Abyss, is releasing tomorrow, and CCP doesn't really do big trailers for their like big updates anymore. They used to, but now what they do is they release feature videos, and the feature video for this one was pretty short, so I decided let's throw it in there, because you still get to see all the cool shit that goes down in EVE. So brace yourselves for some sweet internet spaceship action. You're going to be able to convert faction citadels. There's a new PvE zone that's being added. It's going to be sick. All right, that's it's going to be sick. There's updates to scanning and to exploration, which I always thought was really quite fun. Any thoughts on this? Are you tempted to re-enter New Eden?
I mean, honestly speaking, If they switch up the way they did skills, I might consider it. But right now, the skills just require so much time investiture in the game that unless you really are just playing Eve, either because you love the hell out of it or you're actually making a profit doing it, I personally, it's not my speed.
Well, did you know that skills were actually switched up a little while ago? You can still train them as normal via time, or you can spend ISK to purchase skill boosters, and you can purchase in-game those boosters to inject skill points into your character. Or you can do the reverse, and if you've just got way more time than you have use for your skills, you can take your own skill points, save them into a booster, and sell it on the market, and get some ISK that way. It was a really kind of crazy scheme that they pulled off, but it was pretty sick. A lot of people really enjoyed it, and if you were just a fan of doing it the old-fashioned way, they didn't change the way that it worked. You can still do it that way, which I thought was just really cool. Did you also know that New Eden is now a free-to-play environment? You can play Eve without having to pay for it?
I heard that they had done a free-to-play transfer. I know that's the way a lot of MMOs have been going, just because of the fact that with the way the market is, they kind of have to do that conversion. But I heard that in the later levels, as you advance your character, that more and more you kind of had to start paying for things. So no, I was not aware of the free-to-play conversion, nor am I aware of how far that really goes.
Yeah, so you played it back when it was mandatory to pay, correct?
Oh yeah,
So-
when there was a subscription.
Yeah, there still is a subscription. The way that TCP transitions into new things is that they add them as options. They never change the currently existing functionality. So when they added free-to-play, what they did is they added a new type of clone, and then they reclassified the current existing clones. So if you were already paying for Eve, and you still are, you now have what's called an Omega clone. And an Omega clone is just a clone that is, in air quotes, upgraded, but really it's still just a subscription model where you can train skills normally, you can do all of that stuff. And what they did when they added free-to-play is they added a new clone type called alpha clones. And if you are an alpha clone, you train skills over time at half speed, and there are certain skill books that you cannot learn. So there is a point where you will cap out really what you can do as an alpha clone, and you need to upgrade to Omega in order to fly bigger ships. But this is not a hard limit factor. I mean, you can fly, I believe, up through cruisers in alpha clones. And there's a lot that you can do in cruisers and under. And I actually don't believe that mining vessels are limited, nor I think are the T1 exploration vessels. So there's still a lot that you can do in New Eden. And of course, there's all of that, normalcy like market trading and industry and planetary exploitation and all that stuff. But that's just if you're looking at, not paying. If you pay for it, it's exactly like it was before. They just sort of relabeled everything as, look, if you pay for it, now you get all these new things, but if you were already paying for it, then nothing changed, and instead the galaxy got filled with a whole bunch of new people to go kill, right? So it was a good time for all. Whew.
Sounds like it. I'll have to keep that in mind going forward.
Yeah. EVE Online is still probably like the best MMO I've ever played. It was the perfect sandbox. I could talk about Eve for hours and hours, so let's not do that. And let's move on. The last game that is coming soon is on June 1st, and that is called Earth Atlantis. And this is sort of a underwater bullet hell set in a dystopian future where the Earth got flooded because of terrible apocalypse. Let's take a peek. underwater bullet hell with giant sea monsters. How about it?
I have to say, I'm really intrigued by it. I love the art style where it's just that old 2D kind of side-scrolling shooter.
Yeah.
But it's really reminiscent for me of a older game. I don't know if you remember this at all. It's called Ocean Hunter or The Ocean Hunter. It was a shooting gallery game that used to be all over the place in arcades back in like 1998 when it first came out.
Okay.
And you would go underwater and you would hunt like the megalodon, or you would go hunt like just very kind of I don't remember all the names of the different monsters, but you would go hunt various different giant monsters underwater as like an underwater adventurer, and it was just a blast. And I gotta say, if this game is anything like that, then I'm definitely looking forward to it. But it's kind of reminiscent of that for me personally, so it is definitely a shot in the arm with the old nostalgia gun.
All right, sick. Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks cool. I don't know if I'll purchase it myself. I might. I don't know. I might. We'll have to see, because it's one of those things that looks like I could just sit down and enjoy for a couple of hours. It doesn't look like a game that I could play for more than probably 5 to 6 hours, right? I might get everything that I'm going to get out of it, and who knows? Maybe it's better than that, and I'm just misjudging it. But I mean, it certainly looks like I could be very entertained by it for at least a little while. So we just spent a half hour on things that are coming up. What do you say we talk about what has been? What games have you been playing recently, Trey?
Recently, I know I have been dropping a bunch of time in the old BattleNet between Heroes of the Storm and also a game that's been kind of controversial for some. A lot of people have also enjoyed it, but Destiny 2, especially with the new DLC that it just released.
Sick. What's your power level up to? Or I'm sorry, your light level. What's your light level at?
I have to check. It's been, like I said, it's been a little bit of a while since I've played it. I just recently started dropping back into the game to start playing the new DLC.
Sure.
But last time I played the game, my light level, go to the old DIM, I think was somewhere near 300.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I believe the new light max is 380, I think. I am currently at 363. Been hitting those weeklies, just knocking them out of the way, doing my raids, doing my Crucible, as much as I hate doing that, doing all of the just planetary missions and clan rewards and all that stuff. So it has been a interesting time. I gotta say, I love the new expansion. The new one is great. Curse of Osiris was The current expansion, I'm on board. I like it. Mars is a big enough place for me to be like, all right, this is a good planet. I have no worries hanging out on Mars. It's not as big as some of the other ones, but I'd say it's at least 2/3 of the size, which is really nice. The events
that's
are
definitely
fun to play.
good. Because I know that Curse of Osiris definitely had a lot of controversy associated with it, just with the size of the level.
It was the size of a football field. It was tiny. So I think the only really good thing in Curse of Osiris was Eater of Worlds, the raid lair.
Yes, that was a hell of a lot.
That was good, dude. I remember I was one of the people who was trying to figure out how to do that raid lair on day one that it was out there, and we had so much fun just trying to figure that shit out. We were there for like 8 or 9 hours, and we didn't even finish it. We got to the final boss. We got to the last phase of the final boss, and we just didn't have enough time because people had to leave. But it was a lot of fun. So Destiny 2 for sure. Obviously I've been playing Destiny 2. I've also been playing Raft. Have you heard of this one at all?
Yes, actually, that's if I'm not mistaken, that is the survival one where you start off in a raft, going to a deserted island, I believe it is.
Something like that. Yeah, you're on a raft and you just have to survive on a raft and figure out what the hell's going on. So I played it with a couple of friends of mine, and we finished the content that is there so far. And I gotta say, I enjoyed it. It was really good.
Is that the one with the different hunts where they have like the what was it, the Great White Hunt and the hunts for the different monsters uh,
No,
with the oil rigs and everything, or is that a
no,
different
that's something
game?
else.
Gotcha.
Oh, that sounds interesting as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that one it was definitely a little bit more like Minecraft, where you could kind of assemble your raft, but different game. Let's not get into that one.
okay, fair enough. Sit here musing about it all night. And the other thing I've been playing is Dark Souls Remastered. As you probably know, I am a big fan of Dark Souls. The first Dark Souls is my favorite game of all time. It's really quite a feat to achieve because for a long time it was KOTOR, the first KOTOR, and
Oh wow, yeah.
Dark Souls slowly overcame my love of KOTOR to become my favorite game of all time. And so Dark Souls Remastered came out this past week, and they changed essentially three things in that game. Number one, it now runs at 60 FPS where it used to run at 30. Number two, it now renders at 4K resolution. And number three, they improved multiplayer. So now you can have 6 people playing at the same time, and they included password matchmaking so that you can get connected with your friends more easily. And lastly, they switched it to dedicated servers instead of peer-to-peer so that the connections are significantly more stable and getting teleport backstabbed is way more rare. It's everything else they've left exactly the same. And I gotta tell you, just going back to be able to play Dark Souls when everybody is playing it again is such a good trip down memory lane. And I don't even know that it's memory lane because I play Dark Souls like every 6 months just because I love that game. But having a time where the community is all back together playing one game again, like everybody came out of the woodwork and got back, it's so good, man. Like there constantly is like disaster has been averted because of the defeat of the Grave Lord Covenant, and like there are so many summons available, and you get invaded all the time, and everybody always needs help. It's a good time to be a Sunbro, all right? It's a great time to be a Sunbro because everybody who had like got into Dark Souls in like 2 and 3, and they never wanted to go back and play the original because they knew it was like only 30 FPS and it was only a port and that kind of thing. Like now it's a direct like we did this for PC. Like oh, it's so nice. I'm having a great time with that.
I gotta tell you, my experience with Dark Souls is probably a little bit different.
Okay.
It's a little bit less tuned towards just the summoning experience, and probably a little more given to both sadistic and masochistic tendency. Masochistic because obviously you just run in over and over again, dying horribly, but then again, that's what the game's based off of. And just kind of that more sadistic tendency where you just invade someone and you just take your jollies out on just making their life a living hell.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, chaos blade all day, just ruin every noob's life. It's satisfying, and yet you're a terrible person.
Well, that's how you know you're having fun.
That's exactly how you're having fun. Oh man, let's move on to the news, shall we? We already briefly touched on Dauntless, but did you play The Wolf Among Us?
I did actually. That was probably one of the better Telltale games in my opinion. It's really what brought me into Telltale as a
Yeah,
franchise.
it's in my opinion, I think it's the best Telltale game. I mean, you could put forward hard evidence for Walking Dead series, and the first one I think was probably the best one. But just in terms of how much I enjoyed everything that was going on, I really liked Wolf Among Us. It was super good. So anyway, the reason this is in news is that The Wolf Among Us Season 2 has been delayed to 2019. I know, yeah, it was going to be this year. I don't know exactly what happened with it, but there was some internal turmoil going on at Telltale, and they laid off about a quarter of their staff a few months ago.
Actually, fun fact for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been following this, but there was an interview recently done with some of the ex-Telltale employees, and apparently they've been having some serious issues with policy and with corporate culture. Apparently, there's been some controversy as to the work environment and conditions that their employees have been going under, as apparently Telltale has kind of developed a little bit of a habit of over-promising and under-delivering. So they're just been apparently riding their employees really hard. Some might even say harder than they should to get things done on deadline when they're kind of setting deadlines that are unrealistic, even for the large team that they had before. So I can only imagine what the new conditions are going to be like for the Telltale Game employees going forward now that they've slashed the staff.
Well, hopefully things work out for the best there. In any case, I would love to see another season of Wolf Among Us. That was an exceptional game.
Absolutely. It was a great game, and they do deliver great product. I'm just hoping that everyone there is able to get the time they need to ensure that they're giving us not just the best quality product, but the best kind of overall environment for their creative process.
Yeah. It's bad to overwork your employees. As somebody who used to work at a college bookstore that overworked their employees, it's good to not do that. So in a bit of sadder news, Total Biscuit. Do you know who this is? Who that is?
Oh yeah, of course.
He passed away this past week at the age of 33. Colon cancer got him. So, fuck cancer, right?
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate for Total Biscuit because I know he made the announcement a while back that he was dealing with the cancer, and
Yeah.
he even made the announcement that he had a very limited amount of time left, but that he was going to continue creating content up until the end. And I'd like to think that he lived up to that promise of trying to give us not just the best content that he could, but also the most insightful and hardest hitting content that he could in his reviews and in his basically creation of the in I'm trying to think of the right words to put it, because this is not just another guy. This is Total Biscuit. He's been very influential in the gaming critic community and in the gaming community at large. So I want to do a bit of justice, but yeah, no, he will be missed, and it's going to be I think a while till we see someone rise to the level that Total Biscuit really brought to the table. So that's just my take on it.
Well, may he rest in peace. Hopefully, wherever he is, he feels better. So moving on from that, there's a game coming out.
Happy times.
Yeah, I know. So there's a game called We Happy Few. Have you heard of this game at all?
Oh,
I'll take that as a yes.
I was gonna say that's a hell of a transition to. Yeah, We Happy Few, talking about keeping you happy. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. What do you know about
taking
it,
some
Chris?
joy pills, but so you might know that the game was banned in Australia. They have refused to license or allow it to be sold in the country, and so this is what I was mentioning with Kickstarter a little bit ago. The game was initially kickstarted, and the company has come out and they've said, look, we know that some people in Australia kickstarted our game, and if it turns out that we're working with the Australian government right now, we're trying to get it available in your country. If we can't do it, we'll issue some refunds. Is what I have read. So hopefully, those people who backed it and kicked it and were supporting it, hopefully they get some justice out of it.
Yeah, I hope so. Although I will say that the game company with We Happy Few Studios definitely have their fight made out for them, because Australia has been notorious for gaming bans and banning different content, not just from We Happy Few, but around the world.
Yeah, and the release that their government let out was a solid read. It was pretty long, but the gist of what the reason they gave for banning it was that the drug that you take in that game, Joy, is the game is easier if you just take that drug, and so they viewed it as encouragement to use drugs, even though the game is a commentary about look at drugs and this is terrible and holy shit, drugs, right? Like, this is bad. The government still ruled that because there's an incentive in the game to use the drug, that it incentivizes drugs, and therefore it's not going to be allowed. So hopefully they can get a second look at it, and that the main theme is understood. But if not, just another day in the life of an Australian citizen, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard for gaming companies to satisfy censorship while at the same time staying true to their story and the content they're trying to deliver.
Yeah, and I mean, more and more games are becoming a vehicle to tell hard-hitting stories and address concepts and ideas that are just, tailored for an adult audience. Because, 20 years ago, the primary audience for video games was kids. It was easy to have an E-rated game and it's fine. But these days, those kids grew up and now they're the ones making games, and we're still obviously playing games. And, being an adult is not fun most of the time, and it's not, bright and colorful and happy. You deal with a lot of terrible things in life, and just dealing with those and finding a way to address them in a safe environment is very much accomplished through video games. You can talk about a lot of themes and really send home a lot of points in an environment where you give the end user a controlled experience, so they get to experience the idea that you want to give them. And it's not just censorship of violence, it's censorship of an idea, it's censorship of thought.
And honestly, not only that, but I think it's also the transition of games from being essentially this product that was meant to be consumed very easily for younger audiences, and was just kind of viewed as this fun time ha-ha thing, transitioning over to a more serious art form of delivering a more serious message, like with The Last of Us as a perfect example. It's a game that's been mired in controversy because of its darker content, but everyone who familiarizes themselves with the story pretty much universally agrees, while it is dark, it is very beautiful, very complex, and just really entertaining and interesting to explore that emotional spectrum. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how those things continue to develop, not just with video games, but with censorship of video games as a whole.
Yeah, and I think games as an art form, I think there are a lot of people who will try to make an argument that games aren't art, and I would like to point out that they absolutely can be, and they absolutely are. And my big perfect example of this is a game called Dear Esther. Have you played Dear Esther?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
So it was initially a mod for Half-Life 2, and it did so well and got so many donations to the developers that they released it as a standalone game on Steam. And they recently, I don't know if it was recently, but they released a definitive edition of Dear Esther, and it's you only walk, and there's no guns, and it's just the story of a man who is stranded on an island after a shipwreck, thinking about his past, slowly succumbing to an infection, and eventually dying. And it's an incredible, just look at this guy's inner psyche. And I cannot do this game justice. It is visually beautiful. It is so well written. The voice acting is poignant. I mean, please, if you don't want to spend any money on it, go find the original mod for Half-Life 2. Play that. It's such a beautiful, beautiful game. I highly recommend it. It will take you less than maybe about an hour to get through it all the way.
I'll have to check that out.
It is absolutely beautiful. So we can't have a news segment without talking about something ridiculous. Would you like to hear something completely ridiculous?
I think I know where you're going with this one.
I can see you reading the documentary. So, you've heard of Star Citizen. Everyone has heard of Star Citizen. It's a game that's so ambitious it will never be completed because it keeps growing new parts. Like at this Oh my god. So Robert Space Industries is the company that has been developing this game for years. And back in like 2012 when it achieved official Kickstarter status and it was successfully funded, I think $200 million have been raised for this game so far. Only through crowdfunding. Like just 200 million. I think last year they made $31 million from selling ships in this game that's not released yet. $31 million. Okay? Now this is the kind of game where the people who are actively playing Star Citizen have more money than sense. Okay? And so this is a great sale for them. I can see this being a great deal. So Robert Space Industries has announced a new package for their game that includes 117 ships, which is pretty close to every ship in the game. Has 163 in-game items, which encompasses like posters and ship upgrades and skins and all this stuff, right? That you just have extra stuff in the game. And you can get this for the low cost of $27,000.
The low cost.
$27,000. I'm not making this shit up, okay? Now, here's the better part about this. As if this wasn't an insane enough package to be able to get access to, only the most dedicated fans of Star Citizen gain access to this package. You can only access this page if you have already spent $1,000 on Star Citizen.
You know, at a certain point, Chris, I think it's just going to be more profitable for them to just keep promising things just to get people to give them money. I mean, for all we know, their lab development area could just be a monkey on a cardboard box and a typewriter. Just, you know, they just throw bananas in every now and then. And they just sit back and promise some new content. And, you know, in reality, it's this. They'll occasionally, you know, maybe actually bring in some programmers to make a new trailer and then just be like, oh, yes. Give us a few more million. Yes. This is the new business
The game
model.
is actually a bit playable. They are an alpha. Like, you can fly some ships around. You can do some dogfights. They added, like, a racing thing. You can walk around on stations and all this stuff. But, like, it's nowhere near completion. It's a whole bunch of, like, independent standing tech demos that show things. But, like, if this game ever actually becomes completed, not only will it be the most ambitious game to ever be completed, not only will it be the most expensive game to ever be produced, it will be the best game that has ever existed.
Although I will say that the idea of a game that grows with its content and grows with its consumption is a very interesting idea, especially if it's a game that continuously grows without having to buy DLC or without having to buy expansion packs of some kind of variety. To just see that game develop and grow as people just go, oh yeah, I'll just buy some more ships and then spend money. While you don't actually have to spend money on the content, you can buy the new shiny thing. It's almost like making a game using the old Team Fortress 2 tactics of hats and just being like, yes, we will build a complete game, funding our game and everything about it with nothing but hat purchases.
Do you know what game has been around since 2003, has had new content produced in vast swaths yearly, has had a consistent player base, has never had a single paid expansion or any mandatory expense, and yet people still love and play it, and also takes place in space?
Tell me.
EVE Online.
We just go right back around.
Taking it right back to EVE Online. Play EVE. All right.
So let's bring it back around to something else again.
Yeah.
Have you heard about what is happening with Mirage Arcane Warfare?
Yes, it has been removed from Steam because of GDPR regulations. This is one of those things that's going on with the develop. This is the same company that made Chivalry, and so they released a statement saying that, you know, it's unfortunate that this has happened, and Mirage has never really had a lot of players to begin with. There are normally only like 2 or 3 people online ever. They had a promotion where they released it for free, and they said excuse me, they said that brought in about 1 million players, but then they didn't stick around, and so Mirage just kind of was on the way out anyway. But because of these regulations, and because of the low sales of this game, the developers just don't have the money to correct it, and so it's being taken off Steam, and there's nothing that they can do about it. And so they said that hopefully next time they'll do better.
It's not just being taken off Steam; it's being taken off of all third-party retailer sites.
Yeah.
And the multiplayer servers are going to be shut down on May 31st.
Yeah, it's entirely dead.
The reason why I say that we're bringing it back around for everyone is because of the fact that we were talking about censorship a little bit ago. And for those of you who don't know, GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulations, which is actually a form of law, and it follows a stricter form of enforcement for privacy in Europe, which for many content creators, not just video games, has kind of acted almost like a certain form of censorship. Now, that is to say, it has forced people to go about making things in a completely different way than they have before. However, whether or not this really protects you more or just makes it harder for people to bring you content, it's debatable. I know there are people both sides of the fence, but for me personally, while I do like the idea of my personal information and details not being as easily to access and widespread, I do feel that it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, how far it goes, and what else other than just Mirage is affected by these things.
I've been a little bit curious, and I haven't been able to find any information what specifically it is about Mirage that was impacted. To my understanding of GDPR, it is a Data Protection Act. It's been instated in the European Union. It has been in effect now for 3 days. I'm sure you've all been getting emails about updated privacy policies for all the websites, allowing you to request the deletion of your data, and they must comply. Companies have been doing this in America as well because it's easier to simply apply a policy update to your entire service than to do it regionally. So as a big advocate of personal data security, I am a fan of GDPR, and I'm really glad that I can have control over my personal data again. In terms of how this impacts games, my understanding is thus: if you give consent to collect your data and you give that data, okay, but then if you request that data to be deleted, the company must comply. So I don't personally think that it changes the way that existing products must work, and my guess is that somehow Mirage was collecting data from your system, and they did not have the means in place to remove that data and keep the game functioning. So I don't have the details on it. I would be very interested on a write-up, but I have a sneaking suspicion that there was something a bit more going on under the hood with Mirage than just some type of censorship.
Or maybe not. It's hard to say. I mean, there's so much going on, all these different laws and the different details and minutia of them, that it's really hard to know where exactly the buck stops. But
I'm curious.
We'll see.
I'm curious to understand your. I'm curious to understand your understanding of this. My understanding is that GDPR is a form of protection, and your understanding seems to include some form of censorship. I'm curious as to where you're finding this viewpoint from.
Well, if you think about it, it's not direct censorship. It is censorship in the fact that if your game for some reason collects data, and now I don't have the specifics as to how GDPR what it regulates, specifically what aspects of a game. So it could be, serious information like, local data on your terminal is what it covers, or it could be something as simple as getting statistics and heuristics for your experience as a gamer, how you play it, how well your system runs the content of the game. So it really does kind of bring into question, at least for me, where does GDPR come in as far as what it protects? Because if it is something as simple as, well, your system runs at a 60 FPS or 35 FPS, then, and that's frames per second, for me, I have to say, well, it's kind of a weird way of censoring, just because of the fact that now, as a gaming engineer, you can't collect data as to what the user experience is through your game, if in fact that is what it covers. So yeah, I'd say it's kind of a form of censorship, just from the fact that we don't know what exactly it protects against or causes the regulation of. At least for me, I don't know. But in its base form, censorship is anything that comes in the way of the production of one thing or another. Any kind of hurdle, any kind of barrier to entry that is created, erected, or brought as interference can act as indirect censorship, just because of the fact that it is making it so that you can no longer access the original content in its original unaltered form. Now, in some ways, we do need those censorship details. Not all censorship may necessarily be bad. I know, for one, I'm personally against loot crates. And getting loot crates out of our games, I think, is a good idea. But, we do have to see, well, what is covered by what. I know certain laws, like what happened in Australia, can be very... it can be a slippery slope.
Sure, and I think. Well, let me say this, and then let me say something else. I think I'm not going to go very deep into politics. I tend to fall generally in the middle of the line, but when it comes to the dispersion of ideas, I tend to fall fairly liberal. I don't think that ideas should be suppressed. And if you look up the definition of censorship, it's, and I quote, the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc., that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. End quote. So I wonder if, in some circumstances, people who oppose GDPR are claiming that it is censorship because their product, which attempts to distribute an idea, also attempts to collect data. And I wonder if it isn't easier to say censorship, and get people upset than it is to protect people. More specifically, to protect people's security. To give people the control over their information that you would otherwise be using to sell, right? I mean, that's how Google makes its money, right? They know your...
I think it's a slippery slope. I think it really is a slippery slope, just because, you do bring into question about, like, well, are we protecting people? Are we protecting the consumer? Are we censoring the artist? And, I think there's a way that we can interpret it to be yes and no in both directions, depending upon the way different laws are interpreted, how they're used, how they're implemented, and also what kind of content is being created by a content creator, and what is really the objective of it. Is it trying to send a message, or is it trying to exploit the customer? And I think the morality of the issue is really case by case, more than we can really just paint everything with a broad brush.
Sure.
So,
and I think that something can do both. I think that something can both try to send a poignant message and also exploit the user. I think that GDPR impacting games like that or any media like that and forcing that media to either be altered or removed, while it could be interpreted or painted as censorship, I don't believe that it is. I think if you're going to send an idea, you should send an idea, and not try to exploit the people you're trying to enlighten. So if you do happen to be a company that's impacted like that, and I think that this is a very small percentage. This is like a few cases, right, that we're talking about here. But I think if you do happen to be a company like that, then I would rather my information, my personal data, be underneath my control than be able to receive your idea. That's just where I stand on it.
True, and to just kind of bring that on to the next step as far as data and where we all stand with it, let's talk about our next segment where we're talking about what are companies like Nintendo, Valve, and Blizzard going to be doing, and how are they doing them? Are they doing them right? Are they doing them wrong?
Right, and this one, as we transition, is not a hot political topic. I know GDPR is something that a lot of people care about and that a lot of people have strong opinions on, and I just want to be clear that we are not attempting to be inflammatory, and that we are not attempting to shoot it down or to build it up or to take any type of like real official stance. We are exploring the idea of it and hopefully inspiring some discussion. So moving on from that, hopefully
everyone has a point of view and everyone's entitled to it.
And they're all valid. And so just moving on, we're looking at a significantly more lighthearted discussion about what do we think some companies are doing right and some companies are doing wrong. And I just jotted down a couple of different things to talk about. I think the Valve Steam platform and its competition with other digital distribution platforms is an interesting thing to talk about. I think Steam used to be fantastic. I think right around 2011 or so, Steam was at its peak. They had augmented reality games going on. Portal 2 had just come out. They just released Episode 2 had come out not too long before that. There was still a ray of hope for Half-Life 3. They were better times. But I think
Let's
in terms
be honest
of like
here, Chris, I don't think anyone ever is going to see the light of day on any of the third chapters in just about any of the content that we see coming from Steam and Valve, just because of the fact that, Half-Life 3, Left 4 Dead 3, Portal 3, I don't think we're going to see any
Valve
of those.
can't count to 3, okay? Anyway, I mean, some of the things that... let's just look at Steam specifically. What are some things it's done right? What are some things it's done wrong? I think Greenlight was a great idea. I think in practice, it needed to have a little bit more curation. It's very easy to get a bot to go and upvote your game, 500 times and get it greenlit. I think, having a more stringent process for getting a game on Steam helps to prevent dilution of your game base. I mean, look at a lot of the things that show up on Steam. There's so many Ren'Py visual novels and so many RPG Maker games that are on there now that somehow made it into my library. I don't even know where they came from. I mean, things
Humble
that I'm just
bundle
never
sales,
gonna play.
Chris. Humble.
Humble, yeah. And I just don't want any part of it. I just don't care to have them. I mean, how many games do you get recommended on Steam that you're like, I would never play something like this? Right?
I kind of questioned it when I started seeing things come across my Steam suggested list. Like, I think it was one of the unicorn ones with like the Dark Crystal Saga or whatever. I was like, where? How? Why?
I have no idea what it is. Yeah,
my game
so many just little crappy games just show up there, and I mean, there it is, right? But so I mean, I think Greenlight is something that could have been very good that ended up going wrong. I think something that Steam has done pretty well is allowing a lot of third-party integrators to use their API for a lot of interesting purposes. I mean, if you look at like SteamDB or Steam Metrics or that kind of thing, being able to see how many people are playing a game concurrently, tracking those kind of statistics, being able to look up the total value of games in your Steam account, knowing how much money you've spent, knowing your total playtime for games, all of that stuff, those statistics that they're keeping track of, I think are really interesting. And they provide a lot of insight into not only the games that people are playing and what is popular and allowing you to analyze trends, but also give you some insight into yourself and allow you to see like, oh, apparently I love playing these games more than these games, and I have spent how much time playing games, like a lot of interesting stuff like that.
Yeah, I have to say probably one of the features that you mentioned that I love the most is the one where it allows you to see how many people, how regularly are online, especially with games that are built around a multiplayer only environment. It's really good to know what you're getting yourself into as far as how lively a community is before you purchase a game. Because there are games out that are years old that the community is still vibrant, lush, and happening. And there are games that have come out a month ago that you would think would have a very big and vibrant community, and they're just dead.
Yeah. And some games have that fate. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Another thing that I think Steam has done really well is in-home streaming and the family sharing thing. Not having to have a purchase a game twice to be used on the same computer is a good idea. I mean, clearly, right? But for a while they didn't have that because nobody had thought about it. Not out of any malicious intent. It just hadn't come across anybody's mind. Somebody pointed it out, some developers went to work on it, and they fixed it, right? Like Valve has a lot of people doing a lot of common sense work. And this is important stuff. This is good stuff, right? Like Steam has a very strong infrastructure, and I think a very poor superstructure. Just a lot of crap shows up on Steam. Valve.
Well, I think that has to do more with the fact that the modern gaming development studio realizes that unless they have their own platform that's widespread and well known, then they have to, if they're going to be making a PC game, be selling through the Steam as one of their mediums, unless they're like Microsoft or Ubisoft, or they kind of have their own platforms. They definitely need to have Steam be part of their makeup if they're going to reach that market, if they're going to bring a product to people.
Yeah, and that was actually the thing I was about to address next. Is one of the things Steam is doing wrong is they're asking for a 30% cut of every sale on Steam. Every game you buy on Steam, 30% goes to Steam. I believe that's the number.
Seems a little steep.
Yeah. I believe that's the number. I am going to double check that right now because I don't want to give you guys false information. What cut does Steam take? Yeah, anywhere from 30 to 40% as profit for the Steam store. So it's very steep, and it's no wonder then that companies are going and making their own distribution platforms. If Valve had been only reasonably greedy, if they had asked for 10%, they would still be on top of the world in terms of money, and they wouldn't have other competitors now opening new distribution platforms to...
I mean, even if they asked for 20%, you would probably still have the same thing where people would probably start migrating a little bit over like some of the bigger companies that want more of the percent or the profit. But I don't think that people would be seriously considering alternatives as much if, it weren't necessarily as steep.
Yeah. And there is a flip side to this coin. If Steam is alone, they're a monopoly. Those are always bad. And if they're not bad, they will soon be bad. So the fact that we now have other distributors selling their games as standalone executables or within their own platform, I think is a good thing. Battle.net has been separate from Steam since the beginning, and they have done very, very well at selling their own, or Blizzard has done very well at selling their own games on their own platform, and they have benefited financially from it hugely.
And even now, they're actually starting to bring in new titles from Activision onto the Battle.net platform that aren't Blizzard products.
Right, because of the merger. So now you've got Destiny 2 has been there for a little over a year now, and Black Ops 4 is now available on Battle.net as a pre-order, and it'll be distributed solely on Battle.net on the PC platform. And then of course you have other third-party platforms like Origin and like Uplay, and I believe Rockstar has a social club that they use. And so all of these are designed just to get more money for the parent company and not have to go through Steam's very steep price charge. And I think that's just something Steam has been doing wrong. And to be fair, I think that is the fate of all monopolies. They get too greedy. The dwarves dig too greedily and too deep, and it comes back and bites them in the ass. Now, I don't think Steam is in any danger of dying from this, but I think that they have done this to themselves. And frankly, I think it's a good thing that they did. I would rather be in a market that has more competition, because that makes prices fairer across the board.
Exactly. I was just about to get to that. I was just going to say, hopefully that means a discount for us, the user, if they're competing for our interests.
Right. So, aside from all of that, Nintendo. Nintendo's a company that a lot of people say does no wrong. And there's a lot that they do right. I mean, if you look at the Switch as a hardware device, that thing is excellent. It's probably the best device I've ever seen to be used on a plane for entertainment. It's more powerful than my 3DS, and I can play Zelda on the fly. I mean, it's great, right? Yet at the same time, Nintendo has also taken some very strong stances against custom firmware and boot ROMs. Trying to get inside the hardware of a Switch is significantly more difficult with the 4.1 firmware patch, because they have implemented what we talked about a few weeks ago in terms of their new DRM protections. And just sort of limiting what a person is able to do with hardware that they have purchased. Like, I don't have a great example in front of me, but if I do. I have this easy button that I got years ago, right? Now, this is my button, right? I owned this piece of hardware and everything that is inside of it. I own the hardware. I don't own the rights to the software in it, but I own the hardware. It is completely within my rights as an individual to take this apart, get into the memory and the storage that's in here, and change whatever it says. Right? Like right now, if you push it, it says that was easy. But if I changed it, push it to be something else, that's complete within my rights as a consumer. And Nintendo is actively fighting against that when they put DRM in place to prevent users from getting into their software. Now, whether it's an argument about, not their software, into their hardware. And the problem with this is that it prevents you from being able to fully utilize the hardware that you own if you are a power user. And this is a very small percentage of people. Not a lot of people are going to be impacted by this, but it's interesting at least. So I think there's a lot that's right and a lot that's wrong there. Trey, you've been playing a lot of Battle.net games. What do you think about Blizzard? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong?
Well, with Battle.net, I think it's interesting to see, like we mentioned, the Activision games coming in, because I know for a lot of fans, there's been a fear since the Blizzard-Activision merger that we were going to see Activision kind of taking a more forward and front position over Blizzard and over Blizzard products. So I think this, while it is an interesting thing to see as far as making it more readily accessible for PC users to have games like Black Ops 4 inside of the Battle.net user interface, I think it also might be just kind of setting the alarm off a little bit for some of those people who were a bit more concerned about the merger back when it first happened. As far as what Blizzard's been doing right, they have been doing a fantastic job, I think, of fostering the esports community. And really, that's been kind of their modus operandi, their mission statement for years has been to bring esports forward, make it more accessible, make it more mainstream, and just make it into this thing that can be not only readily recognized by people, but be enjoyed by people. And they've tapped into Twitch, they've tapped into just the cultures of different nations, and we're seeing that transition happen with even the Olympics, where the Olympics now have already announced that they're going to be allowing esports as one of the competitions. So we can look forward to, and then next, I think it's Summer Olympics, that we're going to see a esports team come, probably from every country, or at least the ones who will participate in that event, forward. And I think that more than anything has been something that Blizzard set out to do, that they've done well, and it has helped grow a whole community that just wasn't really there before. Now, as far as what Blizzard has been doing wrong, I would say that there's been some concern over with recent Blizzard products as to whether or not Blizzard is feeding into the wrong aspects of their community. Just because, anytime someone complains, it feels like Blizzard may be taking it a little too seriously. Now, it's not a good idea to ignore your audience, to ignore your consumer. It's never a good idea to turn your back on them, because they are what make your product work. But at the same time, you have to be able to take everything everyone says with a little pinch of salt.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So, just the stuff with what some people probably know I'm referring to with the more recent, I believe it's the Tracer skin, is one of the more recent controversies that people have been apparently making a big brouhaha over. And
What's
it's
this new
interesting.
Tracer skin?
Apparently, they changed her hairstyle and changed some of the coloration. And some people like it, some people don't. Some people are saying that it's terrible and motivated by certain things, and other people are just saying, well, it's just a new style, and Blizzard changes the look of their heroes in Overwatch all the time.
Oh,
We
like with
see it.
the blonde hair and the like shaved sides.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a skin, isn't it?
Exactly. It's
Have they
not.
removed the old skins?
No, it's still
Then
the
what the
same
hell's the
thing.
problem? Like, come on, guys, get your shit
I
together.
I don't know, man. That's what I'm saying. I don't know, where all this controversy comes from. It sometimes seems a little manufactured just to kind of promote the upcoming thing. But
Yeah,
at
I
the
mean,
same
people will
time,
complain because it's fun to complain, and because other people will complain with you, and then you feel like we can all complain, and look how much we have in common, and this thing is terrible. It's very easy to get a mob together, right? Like,
yes, I think
so
a lot more these days has been ruled by emotions more than they've been really ruled by facts. So I think this kind of is one of those things where it's interesting to see how the bandwagon gets together, and it's also interesting to see how people react to the bandwagon getting together.
yeah, for sure. Well,
But yeah, that's my piece on Blizzard.
that's fair. No, that's totally fair. Um, as you know, I'm not a fan of loot boxes. I don't believe you're a fan of loot boxes.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
I
completely
it's
forgot
just
about that.
that's one thing they're doing wrong. Like, you understand me. Blizzard has never in their lifetime released a bad product. Everything that they release is just like, it's polished, it's essentially bug free, it plays super smoothly, it's enjoyable, but they
That
also
makes us
do
want to have a movie about it.
yeah, but they also use that success to do shit like, hey, what if we could put microtransactions in literally everything, and they do that.
Yeah,
And I don't think it's
actually,
the worst idea, but here's my stance on loot boxes. I don't like the fact that it feels a little bit like gambling. Now, this is just, I recognize that it's not actually gambling, but what I would personally prefer is to know what I'm getting. If I want that new Tracer skin, I want to just be able to pay $6 and get the Tracer skin, right? Or $15 or whatever it is. I know that there's a Mercy skin right now that you can donate through Blizzard to, is it St. Jude, maybe? Something like that. Some charity.
It's one of the major cancer research institutes.
Yeah, and so if you donate $15 through Blizzard, they'll give you that Tracer skin, or the Mercy skin, I'm sorry. And I thought that's cool, because you know what you're actually getting. Like, giving you a loot box with a guaranteed skin drop would be dumb, because what if you already had the skin, and then you would get in-game currency that's essentially useless, or, you know, something else. But knowing what you are going to be paying for, I think, is much more appealing. This is how Heroes of the Storm used to do it before they moved over to loot boxes. If you wanted the sweet new Vala skin, you could just buy that Vala skin for, you know, $3 or whatever it was. And then they released Heroes 2.0, and loot boxes everywhere, and now you can't know what you're gonna get. Like, skins that used to be super elite because you had to reach level 15 or 20 and play X number of games. Now you could get it as a brand new player in your first loot box, and that has been seen, you know?
Yep. I remember the days back when it used to be a mark of accomplishment where if you had a specific skin for your character, you knew that guy was a serious player, because
like if you walk around in a master skin on somebody's gonna be like, watch out for that guy, he knows what's up, right? But now you see like a legendary skin and you're like, oh, that guy got a good drop, you know. Oh well. It took away a little bit of the fun of having a status symbol in that game. Like, I will never get rid of my alpha badge in Heroes of the Storm. I love that thing, because it says I have been here longer than you, right? Like, I remember the old days. But
I think you're starting to show a little bit of your age there, Chris.
Now listen here, Sonny, you stay off of my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
Get off of my lawn. So, I don't know. I think they do a lot of right. I think they do a lot of wrong. And I think it's worth talking about both sides of it. Because if we just ignore what a company does, then we kind of give them license to do whatever they want. So
this is very true. And it was actually funny you mentioned that loot crates seemed a little bit like gambling to you, because you're not the only one. Belgium, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, recently ruled that loot crates are in fact illegal because they fall under gambling, and it's gambling for minors. So that is going to be interesting, because I think that sets a precedent for not just Blizzard, but many companies across the board who make a lot of money off of loot crates and microtransactions.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's just really interesting. But I think on that note, we've gone about a half hour over the scheduled time that we should have. We had a lot of good discussion, a lot of interesting thoughts and good stuff we talked about. But I want to thank you guys for listening. It has been a pleasure. You've been a magnificent audience. Trey, do you have any shout outs? Anything you want to say? Or
Well, I just want to say that thank you for having me on your show, Chris. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you guys for listening in. You're beautiful, and I love you guys.
All right, sick. Well, that said, have an excellent night, and we'll catch you on the flip side.